go ahead and get this evening started so we can try to stick to the schedule and get everybody forward in useful hour this evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to Winnetka August Council's annual spring town hall. My name is Peter Atten, and I am this year's executive chairman of the Executive Council. My wife Caitlin and I grew up in neighboring towns. She's from here. I grew up just a little bit around here in Lake Bluff, Lake Forest, so been on the North Shore for a while. We have 3 little kids, 3 under the age of 10. So if I look tired, I am. And our kids, older 2 kids are probably in school with about this is my 3rd year in the Winnetka Office Council. First year was on the schools committee, second year I chaired the schools committee, and this year I stepped into the executive chair. This evening, we go on to the next slide. The agenda. Thank you. We're going to start with just a quick welcome and caucus 101 and make sure that what the caucus council is about, what we do throughout the year, and why we're here tonight with the caucus meeting. But the main focus is hearing from our tax and value board leaders. So tonight we're going to hear from Chris Rintz, the council president. We will hear from Christina Kodo, the parks board president, Melissa Mitchell, library president, and Melissa Rapp, school vice president, who's covering the Dan Waters years. Dan is the new school board president. After that, well, the 4 leads will each share an update on progress against the Office Council platforms, so what they've been doing against the priorities that we said residents must care about. And talk about other areas where they can use input and other important strategic initiatives going on across the village. At the end, we will have hopefully at least 30 minutes of Q&A. Some people submit questions in advance. There's also going to be ways to submit questions for the discussions, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute. So next slide, please. All right, so to start out, who we are. The podcast, we're going to start with a little bit of terminology here. Because this was very foreign to me when I got involved. I didn't know anything about the podcast. So somebody said, oh, it's a great way to get involved, we're in the issue to support the community. But I started with what is the caucus? So we're all the caucus, all voting residents are part of the caucus. There's nothing you have to do to opt in. That is still the definition of the caucus. The council is the group of volunteers who sign up to help with the survey, the slate of candidates, processing survey results and platforms that can inform and guide our board work, our village leaders. And then we also support some logistics around just making sure candidates get officially on voting. So the way I think about it is the caucus council facilitate our local government process, and we're arming board leaders with great insights and what residents care about most. So we really started as a liaison between the residents and the boards. That's our goal. The caucus council has been around for a long time, over 100 years, and actually town halls date back even longer than that. So this routine and what we're doing this evening is actually very much steeped in tradition, and it's an honor to be up here with these leaders, continuing that tradition for the benefit of all of our residents. We are not a political organization. Some people get a bit confused about that because we were involved in the political process. But really, the Winnetka Council is not here to be at all associated with a political problem. We're apolitical. Anybody in the community can get involved in doing, and we have a really diverse set of perspectives and residents that contribute their time and talent to help with our efforts. We are also governed by published bylaws. So if anybody wants to better understand what we do and how, you can do what I did. I had to fight to New York with no internet, and I thought, you know what, I'm finally going to read the bylaws cover to cover. And I did. And there's a lot in it, but we are governed by bylaws. We try to cover align with those and follow those as best as possible, but there's a lot of detail. So what we do is survey. Hopefully most people here have done the annual survey. We'll do another one this year that will go out right after Labor Day. Those results are critical. Survey goes to everybody in the community, try to get everybody literally to participate. And last year we got well over 10, I think over 15% of the community participated. So a couple thousand responses. So very representative data and a great profile of this is good. We support seating, so we help find good candidates for all of the positions. The goal is to ensure, we're fortunate to live in a community that generally runs pretty well. And so the goal is to continue to have good people. So we support the board with the insight and survey, we help with that slating process, and ultimately support candidates that we think will reach out to. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the town hall actually precedes the formation of the caucus council. So town halls like this started in 1890. Our communications chair, Jan Bodden, shared this info. And I was kind of blown away to see the names involved with Jane Addams and Clarence Darrow. Which thought it was really cool to remember, hey, this isn't something that is just, it was something for the last 15 years. This is a huge part of American history. And Winnetka was kind of pioneer in doing this and getting residents very involved in how the village runs. Okay, next slide. So what we're here for tonight, again, I'd show it. This is what we do leading up to the town hall. So we solicit calls for people to get involved with the caucus council. We solicit input on what people want to hear about. So Jan, if you click ahead, we actually kind of check these things off. We get an agenda out. We're pretty good about this year. Jan, if you just go next slide one, it'll click in. We got the invite out 4 weeks in advance. We've got an invitation to serve on the caucus council. We actually did that well in advance. The committees come together more like in February, March, so that we can then get this year started. This is the first official public event of the year. It kicks off with the spring town hall. Next slide, please. Next slide. So we've invited, back one. We've invited input several times. It's been on the website. We emailed this out to everybody, inviting people to submit questions in advance. We've looked at all of those questions, so we have an idea of the themes and topics that people want to hear about, and we'll do our best to cover those this evening. And that last checkpoint was about fundraising. And I would be remiss if I didn't touch on this. I'm actually going to touch on it 2 times tonight because it's important and we can't do our work without funds. So if you go to the next slide this time, we operate on a shoestring budget, a few $1,000s a year. It covers insurance, it covers printing, the postcards to remind people to do the survey, really basic stuff. This is a bare bones budget, and it mostly comes in through small donations. If you like what you see tonight, if you want to support these efforts, please go onto our website. There's that donate now button in the top right, and we'd love that help. There's nothing about this is for profit. We're literally just trying to cover our costs. Okay, next slide. So the plan for tonight, this is also in our bylaws, Rule 123, for anybody who wants to see it. Next slide. It's going to give reports on what matters most to the public interest. So we've thought about this. We've asked the leaders to address the platforms from the prior year and other things that residents should know about. Answer those questions. So next slide. And then one more, encouraging residents to get involved. I think part of what we're doing here leading up to this event and tonight is just reminding people, hey, your voice does matter and you can speak up and ask questions and come to an event like this to hear from our leaders. So I think it's a really great thing. Okay, next slide. This is our executive committee this year. There's a good amount of turnover on the executive committee every year. It's not a multi-year term. People serve for 1 year at a time. And actually the max is 2 years in different roles, but you sort of start over and reapply every year. So I'm the executive chair. Betsy Owens is our vice chair. Our first typo. Ian Larkin is the village slating chair. The village teams are a bit different. With Village, there's village slating, and then there's a village platform committee that focuses on the survey and how that village-centric topics for the survey. Alex Ross leads parks, Laura's library, Stanton is schools, Jan is communications. We're doing a ton with communications this year. Part of the fun of joining the caucus council, if you want to get involved in future years, is meeting neighbors and that you otherwise wouldn't interact with. I didn't know any of these folks a few years ago, and now Jan and I probably speak twice a day. So it's very, very fun to get involved in and really feel more plugged into the community. And Kathy's our rules chair, trying to keep us on track throughout the year. And Doug is the one encouraging me to do those plugs for donations. But he's done a great job of structuring our finances. Okay, next slide. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I wanted you to see it because these are your neighbors. These are your friends. These are the folks that you see at the Grand. These are Winnetka residents who step out and help with the caucus council. There are about 50 folks here. We split them up across the committees.
And in addition to these primary committees, everybody serves on either communications, rules, and finance. So there's a lot of great volunteering and contributions from all of these folks. And I tip my hat to them. It's great that so many people are willing to do that. Okay, next slide. This is how the typical caucus council year progresses. So simple, but I try to just lay it out. The top row is kind of the key meetings. So we already did our spring council meeting where we sort of formed a new caucus council for the year. And that was sort of an orientation session for some of the slides you actually just saw. What does it mean to be on the council? How do we operate? We're here at the spring town hall. The fall council meeting precedes the fall town hall. That's where at the fall council meeting, we'll determine the slate of candidates that we want to bring forward. And we also finalize how we want to structure the platforms, the insights that we get from the survey. And then at the fall town hall, we really finalize it through community votes and getting all of that locked in. The survey kind of takes place throughout the summer, and then you'll see on the bottom the slating activities. So in July, we'll do the first call for candidates. Anybody can nominate somebody to anybody of the roles. We would love to have a great pool of talented individuals to engage with this year. So if you have somebody in mind, it's not too soon to start talking about them. Or if you'd like to put your hat in the ring, you know, it's the beauty of the democratic process. Get involved, learn the issues, and we'd love to talk to you. Okay, next slide, please. This is a slide showing there are a lot of positions that are coming up and will be open in the year ahead. So I wanted everybody to understand that the slating, when we talk about it, it's not 1 or 2 roles this year. Some years it is. Last year it was 3 seats on the Village Council. This year there are 3 seats at least on every board. So we do need good folks to get involved and step up. The lighter color is folks who could run again, and it's just there at the end of the term. The darker colors are leaders who are at the end of their term limit and will be rolling off boards. And we'll share these slides. Everybody can see this later on as well. Okay. So the Q&A format tonight, I want to get it over to our leaders who you came to hear from. Questions can be submitted in 2 ways. You can text that phone number, the 708-437-6464. That's going to go to our team in the back. They'll see those messages come in, and they're going to help us process live questions this evening. If you'd prefer to do pen and paper, that's perfectly fine as well. If you have an agenda in hand, on the back of it is a question form. Raise your sheet in the air, and somebody will be looking for that, and we'll come around and collect it. That too will go back to the room, and so that joins the same questions kind of feed that we're using throughout the night. The reason we're doing it this way is just to keep things moving and try to cover as much content as we can tonight. Following the event, we'll go collect all the questions, see which ones we didn't cover, and then we will work with the boards to get written answers to those things so that everybody can get the insight and information they're looking for. So the footer at the bottom of every slide will be that phone number and a reminder on how to submit a question. So as we go throughout the presentation, just look there. That'll be there throughout the night. Okay, next up. That's for the Zoom folks to make sure they can see it. Same number. And I think then we're getting into presentations, right? So next slide, please. All right, so I have the pleasure of introducing Chris Rintz this evening. Ian Larkin normally would, but again, he's traveling, and so I'm going to cover this. So it's my pleasure to introduce Chris. Chris Rintz will kick off the discussions tonight, and he's lived in Winnetka for over 30 years. He has served as a trustee of the Village Council, and next year will conclude his 4th and final term as president of the Village Council. His service to this community has been immense. His contributions have ranged from guiding the village through the COVID years, the stormwater project, the downtown streetscape projects, improving collaboration across village commissions, the growth of our business districts, and he's been very involved in pursuing and securing public grant money for important Winnetka initiatives, something that had not really been a part of how Winnetka is operated, and Chris has really changed that for us. He's deeply involved in the future of the post office space, the developments at Elm and Lincoln, really any hot topic or major issue to the village. Chris's commitment to the community and public service in general are exemplary, and I want to thank him for his service and for embracing public forums like what we are here for tonight. So Chris, welcome. thank you, and the mic is yours to share updates on Village Council initiatives. If you would prefer to come up here too, perfectly fine.
It's okay, I can sit. You know, Peter, you're doing such a good job. Maybe I could just.
We're supporters. We're here to help. Yeah.
People who know me well know I hate the sound of my voice. And talking for 15 minutes to me, while I can do it very easily, is not something I really embrace quite a bit. So bear with me. And tonight I'm a little throaty because of our seasonal pollen count. So anyway, what I'd like to do, and this is really interesting, this is the first time in all of the caucus meetings that I've attended, the spring meetings, where we've been asked to report on the planks. I know it's in there in the book somewhere, and I know it's supposed to be part of it, but generally we haven't been asked specifically to report on the planks that were issued. These were back in November?
Yep.
And I really like that idea, because I think it makes for a good report card, and I think it helps the caucus understand some of the workings and the constraints Village Council has when trying to address a lot of the issues that are put in front of them. Yeah, I know this thing
Should be good.
is that better? Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to run through the 6 planks for the village and with some commentary, and we'll move forward. The first plank on the caucus platform is the jurisdictional transfer of Green Bay Road.
Actually, Jan, if you go to the next slide, we have the planks up here for everybody to take a look at.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I'm really sorry. I'm not a PowerPoint or a slide guy. I mean, it's just not me.
Chris, you're here doing what we asked. We're thrilled. All good.
I'll talk your ear off on the corner on the Green Bay Trail, but when it comes to showing pictures, it's just not my thing. Anyway, the first thing is the jurisdictional Green Bay Road. What a lot of people don't understand about jurisdictional transfer is it's that this transaction between the state of Illinois, IDOT, the Illinois Department of Transportation, and the municipality. When you do a jurisdictional transfer, you're functionally taking ownership of the parcel that was previously owned by the state of Illinois. And in our case, Green Bay Road and Sheridan Road through Winnetka are both state-owned highways that have long been conversations of whether we want to take control over them or not. Interestingly enough, with respect to Green Bay Trail, the Green Bay Road, Wilmette has done a jurisdictional transfer, and Glencoe has done a jurisdictional transfer. And I think what you have is a good example of how not to do a jurisdictional transfer to our south, and how to use that money and do it the right way to our north. So IDOT has always been a very, very tricky governmental agency. They're kind of like ghosts over there. When COVID came along, the entire operation went remote. And the bad news about that is people could decide whether or not they would return your phone calls. So our village manager, Rob Bahan, would literally call every week trying to get somebody to return his calls just so we could have a conversation about jurisdictional transfers. We finally had to go to our representatives downstate, Robin Gable and Laura Fine, for a little help. And since then, at least we've got our call returned. But it's going to be a fairly lengthy and challenging transaction, because in the past, the way the state of Illinois worked, when money was just flying out the door from everywhere in Springfield, they would pay you large amounts of money to rebuild the road to like new condition and modern standards before they turned it over. The state has now changed their tune on that, and they're more than happy to give you a road that they haven't worked on in 25 years and let you take ownership of it. But they're less willing to provide any dollars to actually do the repairs and the upgrades that are necessary. So all I can say at this point is we continue to try to get them to the table. And once we do, rest assured that we're not going to let them go until we figure out a deal. The second item on the platform is the residential design guidelines. I would imagine that not a lot of people, a few maybe, but not a lot of people know that in 2006, the village formed an ad hoc committee that was formed to study this issue. And I was actually chair of that committee. We ended up retaining a nationally known and recognized consultant, a fellow by the name of Norrie Winter out of Colorado. And he worked with our group to produce a really attractive, for lack of a better term, coffee table book that went through the village and tried to show details and architectural standards that are reflective of what we see throughout the community. At the time, there was a lot of other things going on in the village, and there was a lot of heavy discussion on property rights at that time. And leadership at that point in time decided that we just didn't need one more thing that might be sucked into that conversation. So this beautiful coffee table book that we generated some 20 years ago is sitting on a shelf somewhere over in the community development department. What we ended up deciding is that we would offer it to new developers who came into the community as a guide to help them understand better, you know, what elements would be consistent with Winnetka style architecture. To be honest with you, since we've made that move, I'd be surprised if 3 or 4 books made it out of Village Hall. But you're all welcome to go over there and see them because they're really worthwhile looking at. The good news is we do have a platform and a document that can be used to begin to build these standards and help direct design if that's what the village so wants to do, if the community wants to do that. But hold on here, I lost my place. I'm sorry. Yeah, the important thing was to steer this. Now, the interesting thing is this has come back up as another conversation because all of the little lots that were used back in the 2000s, the 90s and the 2000s are gone. I mean, there aren't a lot of tear down possibilities out there in the 50-foot lot neighborhoods. So the trend has moved now to larger lots and larger properties. And you're starting to see a lot more spec homes being built on larger lots at much larger dollars than we'd ever previously experienced. So certainly now you have the concern of really large houses that may not be consistent with Winnetka. One of the points that was raised is somebody, the author of the commentary, indicated that there was a concern or some question about what contextual meant. And without getting all technical about it, I just look in the dictionary and it was very simple. Context, and it even updates the definition so that it's more contemporary. And what Webster says is context now most commonly refers to the environment or setting in which something exists. Pretty simple definition. Then they go on to say, when we say that something is contextualized, we mean that it is placed in an appropriate setting, one which it may be properly considered. So that it was the driving factor and the driving thought process that went into design review the first time around. And I believe that's the same process that will be driven this time around, is that we want houses that look like they belong in Winnetka. Looks like they belong on the block that they're being constructed. They're not the sore thumb that sticks out or the poorly designed house that has all of the elements that are not consistent with homes in our community. That's the sort of thing we're going towards. We'll be talking about this at Village Council very soon. We had an initial conversation about it internally. Plan Commission's pretty full right now with the lakefront, with the Park District applications coming through and some other assignments that are coming their way on affordable housing, and they'll probably pick up this design review along with Village Council as we go along. But it is on the agenda and it's something we plan to do moving forward. Business development. Thank you. It's always interesting when we talk about business development because there's a misconception by a lot of people in the community, and I think across the country, that believe that somehow local governments can manipulate and control marketplaces and deliver goods and services that they want. And, my feeling has always been that we have no real power to manipulate the market, but we do have the power to manipulate and deal with the environment. And I have always been a strong believer that if you build places where small business, new business, local business can project success, then that's an area that they're going to go. If they go into a community or a business district that has busted sidewalks and everything's looking tattered and torn and dirty, that person coming into that environment is going to look around and probably believe that they have less a chance of success just because of what they see around them. Vacant storefronts, a lot of mishmash of businesses and everything else. So through our streetscape program, what we've done is we've created that environment. And lo and behold, what you're seeing now are interesting, vibrant businesses that people want to have in this community. It was interesting that the platform talked about reducing the vacancy rate. I own commercial properties and have financed many of them in my career. And generally in the business, people feel really great if they can work with a 6% vacancy factor. A lot of times the banks will push you to hold a 10% reserve if you're borrowing money on that. So the vacancy rates in the village of Winnetka as of May 16th, 2024 is 4.99%. The Q1 2024 vacancy rate was 3.82. The Q4 2023 vacancy rate was 3.2. And again, the Q3 2023 was 5.32. The interesting thing about percentages in these numbers is because we don't have a lot of retail space comparatively with a lot of other communities. So when you lose 1,500 or 2,000 or 2,500 square feet in a single tenant, it tends to skew the number a lot more than if you were in a larger community with the bigger business districts. But those are fantastic rates. And our community development director, Liz DeChant, has been doing an unbelievable job at going out and knocking on doors and introducing herself to potential new businesses. And I think all of you got an email today announcing the fact that she was able to get Hune Bakery, who is a very popular bread maker in Evanston. They have another outlet. It's in the email. I don't know where it's at. But this will be their third outlet. And, people have been clamoring for a bakery for quite a while in this town. We've had a couple stops and starts over on Lincoln, but this is a real player in the game. And Kathy and I, eat their bread frequently, and it is amazing. So they'll be moving in over in Hubbard Woods, which will add another real positive element to that shopping district. And I think it'll definitely be a traffic generator for years to come.
I read about that yesterday as a Hubbard Woods resident. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, it's great. It's great stuff. It is. It's great stuff. People always want a hardware store. I want a hardware store. Actually, I want to own a hardware store someday, but that's a whole different thing. I worked really hard about pre-COVID, and I actually had an ACE franchisee interested in coming into the field space. And we brought him over there, and I met with the broker and the owner, the potential owner, and they did a very heavy underwriting look at Winnetka, along with ACE, who I guess has to approve sites, and regretfully, it just didn't fit their needs. Hardware stores are like a lot of big box retailers now. If you think about Weiss over in Glenview, they got a really nice big parking lot with plenty of area to put plants and statues and all sorts of things, dirt and salt. We just couldn't offer them all that space in Hubbard Woods, so they took a pass on it. We keep looking, but the spaces to fill that sort of a need are few and far between. But the good news is she picked herself off. Liz picked herself up off the ground, went and knocked on doors in Wilmette, and now Plunkett Furniture will be moving into the Fields Range Rover space over on Green Bay Road, and should add a little vitality to that as well. They're moving from their current store, which I believe is in Plaza del Lago. Bakery, there's another new bakery on Lincoln. I think we all know. Please stop in and support these residents once we bring them home. you know, it's great to look in the window and see the bread or the muffins or everything, but if you don't go in and buy one, they're not going to be around very long. So specialty foods was another thing, particularly in Indian Hill. And I'm proud to say that our public-private joint venture with Kala Coffee has opened at the corner of Green Bay and Winnetka Avenue. They actually soft opened probably 6 to 8 weeks ago, and we just had a ribbon cutting last week there. Tala was the product of a RFP that we put out, which included multiple restaurant operators and food operators. And Tala was the one that Village Council thought best met not only our goals for enlivening that site, but they were also the type of people that we felt comfortable could be good partners with us on that site moving forward. Good news, I heard from them last week that they will be beginning to open up their food menu, and that'll add several more reasons for us to drive down there and visit and maybe grab a bite to eat and breakfast or lunch.
Chris, time check, probably a couple minutes left.
Oh,
Thanks.
good. I've only hit number 4. Senior housing. The village could drive this process. I have developer interest, but this would require a great amount of political resolve to move forward, as any such development would likely require the use of village-owned property. There are several sites in this community that would be amazing opportunities for a quality seniors developer to come in and build their facility to house our residents as they age in place. But it is going to require a lot of work and an understanding that village property is probably going to have to come to the table, not for free, but that we have to basically do another public-private joint venture to get something like this done. I'm up for it. I'm not sure if the community is ready for it just yet. But we will be talking about that probably late in the year at Village Council at a study session. And lastly, not lastly, but number 5, which is where I'll stop.
Okay.
Environmental stewardship. Just this Tuesday, we began work on negotiations for a new contract with IMEA. That's our purchase power provider here in Winnetka. That's who we buy all of our electricity from. Outside the chair of the EFC last night, only one member of the public was present. If people want to have a say in this, we really would appreciate people joining in the conversation early and coming regularly, because these are big decisions that get made over a long period of time. And if we're going to have input, it would be great to have a group with us at the table helping us work through these things. And mention was made in the platform about communication. And the problem is that when you start working on these really meaty technical issues, I'm not sure how you communicate that in a way that people are going to understand. We do a great job telling people about, balloon events and dog walks but this is really thick and deep stuff. So if you are interested in it, I beg you to come to the EFC meetings where they're talking about alternative fuels right now. And I beg you to come to the council meeting when we talk about these things so we can hear what people are thinking about it. In the post office redevelopment, I think all of you have seen that the sign has gone up on the end of Lincoln that the post office is relocating to the north end of Lincoln next to the parking lot, and that will open up the building for us to start in earnest planning and doing something special for the community there. I've been working on a roster for a ad hoc committee. However, a lot of who populates that committee is going to be determined by how we move forward on the design and the public process there. And I'll stop it there.
And actually, some of the other questions that we'll get to later that have come in are around kind of close to Plank 6, but one Winnetka, the developments at Chase, and yeah, so we'll circle back to that.
Sure.
I'm going to turn it over to Alex Ross, who will introduce our next speaker.
Thanks, Peter. I'm Alex Ross. I'm the chair of the Park District Committee for the caucus this year. I'm also a Leo, so I like to hear myself speak, but be that as it may, first point is please donate to the caucus. Second one, I want to introduce Christina Cotto, who is the current president of the Board of Commissioners at the Park District. She and her family have been 30-year residents here in Winnetka and have made ample use of all the Park District facilities and many other things. And in 2019, she was elected to the Board of Commissioners, and she sat on the Finance Committee and has been Vice President for 2 years. In 2023, she was elected President and is here to talk tonight with you about the planks and how they have addressed them over the past year. So Christina, please take it away.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do a half turn just to make sure I know where my slides are. Downside of slides, right? Perfect. All of us at the Winnetka Park District are very excited to kick off our summer calendar, which is chock full of summer camps, water sports, concerts, and holiday celebrations. We look forward to exploring, discovering, and celebrating with all of our Park District residents. We are covering the three caucus planks: the waterfront improvements, the public-private partnerships, and green space. And we will also address the mandate of the caucus to act with civility, cooperation, and efficiency. Next slide. Plank number 1 addresses the lakefront and waterfront improvements. Actually, move on to the next slide. Yeah. Plank 2, thank you, perfect. Plank 1 is the lakefront. I'm happy to report that we submitted permit applications on April 3rd for our Centennial Beach project to the Village Zoning Board of Appeals as a first step in the special use permit process. We have spent almost 2 years listening, scaling back, and refining this project, and are excited to be one step closer. Depending on the length of the permitting process, we are hopeful that construction for Centennial can begin in summer of 2025 to produce a beautiful beach with a dedicated space for dogs and beach patrons, preserving a smaller section of the 29-year-old dog beach and sharing it with all residents and beach pass holders who will finally be able to enjoy Centennial Beach. One of our favorite features will be the ADA accessible pathway, allowing those of all abilities to enjoy this beautiful lakefront together. Winnetka Park District commissioners and residents have worked on these plans since 2014, and I believe that after 10 years, we have reached a great compromise result. Next slide, please. Elder Beach plans have been approved by the board, but may require additional revisions as we work with the village to await the possible relocation of the Elder Beach stormwater discharge, which belongs to the village. The village has had a successful award of their Southeast Winnetka Stormwater Study Project to Strand Associates in April. The village expects to know the diameter of the replacement pipe in July. We look forward to applying for permits for Elder Beach and Park as soon as possible. Next slide. We are in a great financial position to execute on these plans. We have over $21 million in unrestricted reserves as of March 31st, 2024. We have renovated Tower and Maple Beaches, and we have successfully renovated Lloyd Beach in 2022 on time and within budget. We continue to generate approximately 50% of our revenue from our successful programming, which will continue to grow, and we have solid investments. We are keen to use these funds for the purposes for which they were raised, to repair and protect the lakefront, bluff, and beaches at Elder and Centennial. Based on 70% plans, costs for Centennial plus a 10% contingency bring us to a total cost of $6.9 million. For Elder, current estimates are approximately $6 million, bringing the total project to just under 13. Next slide, please. Plank number 2 captures 65% of those surveyed who desire transparent public and private partnerships, and our biggest success here has been our partnership for the golf course with Kemper Sports and Jacobson Golf Course Design. We knew we needed an internationally recognized course designer and are thrilled that the extensive renovation project appealed to Rick Jacobson, whose philosophy of golf course design is to create an unforgettable layout that stirs the imagination, challenges the competitive spirit, and engages a golfer's mind, as well as the golfer's body. We knew we needed an experienced golf course construction firm, and Kemper Sports has been a skilled and thoughtful partner, helping us to make sure that Jacobson's design was faithfully executed. Currently running better than budget by $220,000, Kemper's experience and resources have been fully employed to the advantage of Winnetka's golf community, students, seniors, and everyone in between. Every golfer will find an aspect to challenge them and delight them in this new course. Kemper was an essential partner to expanding our programming while the course was closed through to veterans through the PGA Hope, helping our Patriots Everywhere program, golfers playing with Parkinson's, young golfers new to the game, and existing patrons, allowing all of these groups to watch the progress in real time as they kept their skills sharp. As the weather steadily warms, we should continue to receive additional revenue from range and lessons and maintain our position ahead of budget. Kemper Sports and our staff are also working together to achieve an Audubon certification for the golf course. We look forward to forging partnerships with New Trier High School athletics, their golf teams, the Winnetka District 36 students at Washburn and Skokie who can walk over for a KW golf class, and the partnerships that established during construction with PGA Hope and Parkinson's. Please visit the Winnetka Park District website for a time-lapse drone video of construction from March 2023 to the present. It's amazing. Next slide. Expected to open later this summer, you'll see a fleet of electric golf carts, continuous cart paths, elevated fairways, improved drainage, and expanded water features that will allow us to use rainwater to irrigate our course. All of these improvements will reduce our environmental impact, reduce our irrigation costs, and help deliver flood relief for Southwest Winnetka. A second successful partnership has been with the Winnetka Paddle Tennis Club, with whom we work to buy, transport, and install 2 additional paddle tennis courts on a lesser used corner of the golf course putting green during golf course construction. The WPTC and its 600 members exceeded their fundraising goals and can now support the growing sport of paddle tennis for men's, women's, and co-ed teams. Next slide. The third plank developed by the caucus prioritizes green space and its recreational uses, which are cornerstones of our mandate as a park district. From tranquil, tiny pocket parks to large playfields and lakefronts, we design, maintain, create programming, staff 5 beaches and 26 parks covering 242 acres, serving approximately 14,000 Winnetkans and Park District residents in neighboring communities. We have joined together with New Trier Aquatics to offer swimming lessons. We have partnered with North Shore Sailing to offer a sailing program at newly renovated Lloyd Beach for the 2nd year. We have added a rowing program and an outdoor nature preschool program for summer. We launched our Be Safe water safety campaign together with our Tower Road Beach annual spring cleanup, and we're joined by 60 visitors and our swimming, sailing, and rowing partners. Next slide. Our 2023 annual end of summer survey encouraged us to renew our efforts to offer during days off of school and increase full day programming during the summer as we have greater demand from our working parents. We are working hard to engage as many residents as possible. The shared enjoyment of Winnetka's resources is where our community building starts. We have launched an RFP process for our comprehensive plan, which we expect to be completed in July 2025. This is the first step in working towards accreditation. Next slide. The final mandate, you can actually go ahead, one more. The final mandate from the caucus required cooperation, civility, and efficiency, and I would like to close by offering several examples to show our efforts in these areas. The best example of intergovernmental cooperation is the ongoing Southwest Winnetka stormwater improvements. Village President Rintz deserves the credit for navigating a very challenging set of parameters with the Cook County Forest Preserve, New Trier High School, District 36, Winnetka Public Schools, and the Winnetka Park District. Trustee Kripe from the village and Commissioners James and Archambault all worked together with President Rintz to identify the land area the Winnetka Park District could offer to accommodate 42% of the stormwater storage. After the initial presentation from Strand and Associates in 2016, the village and the Park District entered into negotiations for an IGA to document these joint efforts. The Park District offered use of the Par 3 and the 18-hole golf course for low-cost above-ground storage for 56 acre-feet of water. District 36 was planning an expansion at Crow Island where stormwater needed to be stored underground to meet regulatory requirements. The Park District provided the land for underground storage and conveyance around parts of the Crow Island woods. This example should be celebrated by our entire community and serve as a model for cooperation going forward. The Park District has no gyms. Rather than build two sets of gyms for roughly the same population, we worked with District 36 to share a new, larger gym at Crow Island. We had a small inactive park adjacent to the Winnetka Northfield Public Library District, who were looking to expand. This parcel was of limited programmability for the Winnetka Park District, but offered Winnetka Northfield Public Library District the flexibility for outdoor programming or building expansion. These are thoughtful adjustments of assets owned by the cooperating taxing bodies and should be working together to find the best use for all of our Winnetka Park District residents. Next slide. Finally, we have a new executive director, Shannon Nazal. She's in the audience tonight. After a 3-month nationwide search that generated interest from over 60 candidates, a full panel of the Winnetka Park District Board of Commissioners studied recommendations of consultants before meeting for 16 hours over 2 days in mid-November and selected Shannon Q. Nazal, Certified Parks and Recreation Executive, as the next executive director of the Winnetka Park District. With 19 years of industry-specific training and waterfront experience on the ocean front in Florida and at the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, Executive Director Nazal holds a BA in Physical Education, Sports Administration, a Master's of Science degree in Physical Education, Sports Administration, and a Master of Public Administration degree, and serves as an adjunct professor at Frostburg State University in Maryland. The Winnetka Park District Board and staff are thrilled with the impact Executive Director Nazal has made in her 3 short months with the district and her successful outreach to the lead professionals to bring the Winnetka Park District into closer cooperation with the other taxing bodies. Executive Director Nazal writes a weekly status report containing summaries from all of the operating areas, all community outreach, all media references, and summarizes any financial impact. It's a great collaboration from the entire staff and a terrific summary for the community. We will be hosting a community welcome event as soon as Executive Director Nazal's family is settled here. We are looking forward to working together with all the other Winnetka taxing bodies. We're looking forward to fixing our assets and building great facilities and celebrating holidays together with all of you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Christina. And I will turn it over to Laura Freechak, who will introduce our next speaker.
Excuse me, I am a little allergies too. I'm Laura Freechak. I am the chair for the library committee for the caucus this year. I'm here to introduce Library Board President Melissa Mitchell. Melissa has been a resident of Winnetka for 6 years with her husband and 4 daughters. She's been a library trustee since 2021 and board president since 2022. And we thank her so much for joining us tonight to discuss the library planks. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you. I've also read 35 books so far this year, so just putting that out there. I take my job seriously.
It's about 34 more than me. Good job.
It's a lot of audiobooks.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting off our year, just wanted to revisit what our mission as the library is. I know I went through this last year, but just resurfacing it because you all probably see it exactly one time a year. So the Winnetka Northfield Public Library District is a community resource for the advancement of knowledge and a provider of innovative and informative cultural enrichment for all ages. So we take that seriously. And I think that if you look, you can see that come through in the work that's being done by the board and by our executive director, Monica, who's also here tonight. But I'll quickly just go through the 4 planks that were provided for us last year, give a little update, and then go through a couple of other bonus items for everybody. So the first plank was library home branch usage. This stemmed from a minority of people claiming the Northfield branch in the survey as their home branch. And asked the board to look at the plans for Northfield and how we should be using the space in Northfield and how we should be prioritizing Northfield versus Winnetka. So just to call out, Northfield's population is about 40% of Winnetka's population. It's a smaller community. It's also a smaller branch. Physically, the library itself is smaller there. We also had fewer people from Northfield fill out the Winnetka caucus survey because they're generally not part of Winnetka. with the exception of some parkland and the library. So there were fewer Northfield residents who filled it out. They're a smaller community. And then the Northfield branch also does serve the Winnetka community. So it may not be people's primary location, but it is a secondary location that people use. There are complimentary services provided there. There are complimentary programs that are provided there. So people can go back and forth. They don't have a story time at Winnetka at the same time as a story time at Northfield. So you can kind of go on whatever day or time makes sense for you to whatever branch. It's like a 5-minute drive. So just wanted to acknowledge that is one of our planks. We have done a lot of looking into how the Northfield branch is used. And so we are pretty well versed in that and take it into account when we are planning things for the library. The second caucus plank was strategic direction to provide best-in-class services in the North Shore. So we do a lot of that. We do a lot of data mining. We look at a lot of statistics. We do a lot of comparison and planning with peers. So that we're developing norms and we're taking the learnings from them on things that they're doing. They're taking learnings from us on things that we're doing. And as a North Shore community, we're working to be better to serve all communities. And I think that that works to the benefit of Winnetka. We are doing things that other neighboring libraries are not doing. We are also taking things that they're trying out first and adapting them here when they're working well. And then finally, we have surveys that we are asking people to take part in when they come out of a program that we provide or when they check out books. If you are doing self-checkout in the library, right next to the self-checkout, there's a little survey on like an iPad situation. Kids love it. But we would love the adults to fill it out too. To give us the feedback on what you're looking for and what's working for you, what maybe are some opportunities for us to develop. So we continue to take that into account on a monthly basis. It's something that Monica brings to us in our board meetings that we're looking at. And we're keeping in mind as we are planning the future. And then our third plank was a third place, demand for a third place for people who are looking to work outside of a home or an office. Sometimes, as a mom of 4, I will tell you, you just want somewhere quiet to go. I'm not in that life stage yet, but there are other people who are. So if you're looking for a quiet place to go, we have added tables and chairs to the Winnetka branch. So there's more room and there's more opportunity for people to come in and work. We have also increased the bandwidth or the speed of the internet within the library. It was slow previously and it's faster now. So come on in, find a table, find a place to work. And then Northfield, just to call that out, is another opportunity. It's another place that we have for people to go. There is space there. We have a lovely fireplace with some chairs in front of it. So we are taking into account that people do want space to work. We are contained to the space that we have available. We have looked at opportunities to expand. We know that for the amount of people we serve, the footprint of both of our buildings is smaller than is ideal. We have been in talks, if you've been listening to our meetings for the last year plus, about expanding the Northfield footprint. There's more of an opportunity there. The challenge is that we don't own the building. We've also looked at expanding the Winnetka branch, but we know that there was a large renovation that was done in the recent past, and it was expensive, and it just doesn't feel right to go and redo something that we just did. Additionally, if we were to expand that building, it would limit the green space that we have around the library that people love, that we love, and that we use. So definitely we're keeping in mind this third place demand. But it comes down to what we have available to us and what realistically we can achieve with the space that we have, or in expanding the space that we have in a way that feels right for the community, and we're not doing it just to do it. And then finally, a low priority for the library was the development of Library Park. We agree. We haven't done anything with that space. It was a space that we purchased to protect it from being developed. so that we could maintain that green space outside of the library. There has been talk about what to do with it. In terms of, could we use it for story time? Could we use it to build raised bed gardens? Could we put a beehive in? Are there things that we can do to keep it a green space, to make it feel like it is educating people and serving the community in a way that we can't do inside of the building? So that is something that we are continuing to work through and develop. We've owned it for just a little over a year, so I imagine what we do with that space will evolve over time. But for now, in terms of the way people typically think of the word develop, we have no plans to develop that space. So right in line with the link that was provided. So moving on to the next slide, I just wanted to highlight some of the community collaboration that we have going on. I know Christina talked about this, Chris talked about this. I imagine Alyssa's also probably going to talk about community collaboration because it's something we hear a lot about. It is something that is clearly important to the community and I think is important to us as leaders. So we're working a lot with the other governing bodies. We're also working a lot with other organizations throughout the community. And you see this come to life in the way that we are operating. We have digitized, we work with the Historical Society to digitize all of the back catalog of Winnetka Talk. It did not exist before. So going back to, I think it's 1914, 1917, well over 100 years. Those have all been digitized now, and they are not, magazines that are sitting in a box somewhere because we're afraid to ruin them. We can now access them digitally, which is really great because this can also serve our students and our teachers within the community to go back and look at the last 100+ years of history within our community and use that for projects and research and honestly see all of the really cool things that have happened here. Kind of like Peter was talking about with the people who've been involved in the community, the things that have happened here. So it's a great resource that we have. We work closely with the Park District, like Christina said, for programming, for shared space, just to be friends. And then we are working really closely with, we work really closely with the bookstall for a lot of different programming or programs. We just had the library crawl. It was in conjunction with the Glencoe Library, the Wilmette Library. What was the third one? Just us? We were the third one. And then the bookstall was the final spot. So you go and you get your stamp at all the libraries and then you go to the bookstall. So we were all working together. And then you'll see us at places like the farmer's market and the children's fair. So we're around town. We want to make friends. We want to be present. We want to hear what you want from the library. So like I said, fill that survey out. Stop by and talk to somebody when you see us out in a booth because they love to interact. And then the other thing I was going to say is we have organizations at the schools. We're working in partnership with the schools to have like clubs at the middle schools. And I know that there are conversations with the PTO for programming for next year at Skokie Washburn. So we're trying to have our hands a little bit in everything. And then on to our last slide. I would be remiss if I didn't call out some of our best in class assets and services that we have. We, like I said, are continuing to innovate and evolve the library to best serve this community. One of the things that I'm really excited about that we just introduced, and we are the only library in the North Shore who has it, is a seed library. You can stop by, check out some seeds. Don't just take them, make sure you check them out. And then the hope is that you'll come back in the fall when you have some seeds from the plants that you've grown and return them to keep the seed library going. So that's something really cool that we're doing. We have a library of things where you can come and you can check things out. So we have a backyard movie kit here, like you can check that out, have a viewing party in your backyard for yourself, your friends, your kids, whomever. We have a lot of great studio equipment and a lot of great studio programming, so you can learn to make just about anything in the studio. We have a 3D printer, we have a sewing machine, we have an embroidery machine, we have a serger, we have a Cricut, we have a laser cutter, we have, I don't know, you name it, we've got it. They can teach you how to use it. They have programming every month or every week maybe, where there are all sorts of different things you can come in and learn to make that you never knew existed. We have a new website this year. I believe a new app update is in the works for some point in the near-ish future. But check out our new website. It is pretty user-friendly. It's got all of our new branding, our bright, exciting colors. It is easy to find things on it, in my opinion. And then we've got an increased social media presence. We hired a new social media manager last year coming out of our strategic plan. He's amazing. He puts really great stuff on his social media. If you want a friend, you want somebody to interact with, if you want someone to exchange library memes with, I'm not saying he and I do that, but it's possible. And then, yeah, like I said, we're just collaborating with neighborhood libraries and businesses, and we just want to keep up the fun. So come and let us know what you want to do, what you want to see, who you want us to be.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks.
Melissa. Quick time check. We're running about 15 minutes late. I do not want to shortchange Q&A. I know that's what a lot of people came here for, and I also don't want to rush you, Alyssa. So is everybody okay staying about an extra 15 minutes or so we can have a full Q&A period? That's great. Thank you. All right. So I will turn it over to Stanton Anderson, our schools committee chair, who will introduce our final speaker. Thank you.
Great. Hi, Stanton Anderson, Chair of the Schools Committee. Happy to introduce Alyssa Rapp tonight. Alyssa was elected to the school board in 2021, most recently elected by her peers to serve as vice president for this upcoming school year. And we're excited to hear from you and have you present to the caucus tonight. Thanks, Alyssa.
Thanks so much. I think I was remarking the last time I was on this stage, I was in 8th grade at this very school as Nightingale in Florence and the Nightingale. So it's been a minute. Our daughters are 11 and 9 here in the district, and it was an extraordinary experience as a student in the District 36 public schools is what inspired me to run and keep our great public education great. And it's a pleasure to be here with you three. We've had great collaborations, I know, intergovernmentally. Thank you for highlighting that, Christina. And I will try to keep it brief since we're bringing it home. So to go to the next slide, the highlight I wanted to start with is that the caucus has been, and the planks have been ever present on our minds at the school board, but I think this was the first time that you, Peter, and the caucus came to present to us the summary of the caucus survey to the board in fall 2023, and we commented behind closed doors of how impactful that was and how much we appreciated it, and it's that dialogue that I think continues here tonight. So thank you for your leadership. We value it. And then if you want to just keep rolling through the slides, I'll try to keep it relatively brief. That the punchline on this slide, I'll do the strategic initiatives and we'll get into the plank by plank as quickly as possible. Is I think the broad sentiment we have at the school board right now is great alignment with the caucus, and the planks are, as you'll see as we go blow by blow, pretty consistent with how we're thinking strategically. And if you advance the slide, you can see how our current district strategic plan that was underway the year I joined the school board and runs through 2025. Those four, it's a 4-year plan. We typically run through 4-year plans. Battelle for Kids was our partner in developing this plan. Our next plan coming up next year will be with the Studer Group as part of Huron Consulting. And the plan we're working through right now has 4 key pillars, as you can see: intellectual engagement and motivation to learn, positive culture and well-being, local and national leader in progressive education and talent development, and financial stewardship and facilities improvement, which obviously, you know, was a major initiative, and the referendum is well underway to support it. Keeping moving so we can get to the planks themselves. If you advance one more slide, you'll see them on the screen. I'll go one by one as quickly as possible in just a minute. But to recap, you know, the planks that we understood as the highest priorities are defining a progressive ed, the educational approach of the district, standardized test scores and their role in the district, high school readiness, data sharing and access, and sexual health education, culturally responsive learning. As I said previously, the strategic initiatives in our strategic plan cover really 4 out of the 6 of these, and 2, I think we have room to continue to work together and evolve. And if you advance one slide, you'll see the 2023 to 2024 efforts underway. It's really the highest level summary of the largest buckets of work we have going on right now, which is a tremendous amount. The engagement of data analytics partners to guide informed instructional practices is extremely important to many of us on the school board. I myself, teach at a couple business schools on the West Coast in the past, and here at University of Chicago, Booth as a side hustle. And I can honestly say that the use of high level data, whether it's longitudinal or in the case of Otis, which even parents will get access to later this year, parent and staff facing, provide class-based and individual longitudinal data sets. I think we're moving toward a direction where we will, as a district, be able to use data in a best-in-class way. That even best-in-class trained data analysts would say is excellent. It's a work in progress, and we welcome your input and feedback as to how we start presenting that data to you more transparently even this year. Construction and renovation is obviously well underway. You see it, you feel it, and stormwater alike. It's everywhere, and phase 2 begins on June 15th at all 5 campuses. So it's a big summer for us, and we're grateful for the partnership of our new construction manager, Bully Andrews, in that process. Financial stewardship, I've been on the finance committee since I got to the school board. I'm proud that we're still AAA Moody's rated, and we are very zealous about not just having received the referendum approval, but managing it with maniacal precision. And we have expectations of great excellence in both what's delivered and the financial stewardship of it. And then we have a very strong administrative team. There was a superintendent changeover. Dr. Tess is terrific. And I'm very grateful for her leadership, and they are committed to the long-term impact of all the initiatives we have underway, which is a whole lot. So just one more slide. I won't go through the spaghetti here, but we've got a ton of work going on in the district linking to the caucus planks. And these are small words, but a lot of effort by a lot of leaders at the administrative level, for whom we have a lot of gratitude. And then one more slide, looking ahead as we get to before I go through the planks themselves, I'd say some of the biggest strategic high-level work that's underway, and that will be coming in the next year. We just approved in the last board meeting a K-8 literacy curriculum, new one, and it was an incredibly thoughtful and integrated project that involved much of the staff, many of the administrators and students and parents alike. That literacy curriculum review is being implemented next year. The math curriculum review will be underway. And there's a ton of other next initiatives that in years 2 to 5 you can look forward to, besides the new strategic plan I already mentioned, full day kindergarten, which is being mandated by the state by the fall of 2027. And I think we hope to get ahead of that. And of course, we have collective bargaining agreements coming up, as always, in the next couple of years. So those are the strategic initiatives at the district to make sure we address the planks one by one. As my colleagues did, you can advance 2 more slides past the appendix, and we'll go through them as quickly as possible. Just one more. So in this notion of better defining progressive education, there's already great alignment with our strategic plan and this idea of advancing and leading the practice of progressive ed. We talk a lot about what is progressive education and what are the myths and what are the realities. And I think this idea of a portrait of a graduate, and then in the last year, the work the educators have done in the portrait of an educator really helps crystallize both the expectations of our graduates and educators and how those two work together is a wonderful example and progress toward this goal. And then Progressive Education Network, and joining lots of the best progressive ed networks out there, and also instituting a summer program for our educators and really focusing on differentiated learning opportunities. Those are conversations we have almost every meeting in front of the crowd and behind closed doors as appropriate. Next plank would be educational approach. Was from the Caucus Council. And, we do also believe there's great alignment with our strategic plan here in advancing and leading the practice of progressive ed and partnering with innovative organizations, which can mean many things. And I'd say that the district, I think, is D36. There are many forms of consumable content that the administrators are playing with, whether it's podcasts with Dr. Tess or coffee with Dr. Tess, or even those of us on the school board. And I think, and we of course have many active memberships and partnerships in the educational world. And in terms of the community involvement that you mentioned, Melissa, I think that there's always our desire to be even more engaged. And the real question is how. So we look forward to partnering with the caucus and to understand how we can continue to do that better and better over time. Plank 3, standardized test scores, something everybody loves and loathes because they're instructive but painful to both take and digest. I think that we embed equitable and inclusive practices to differentiate learning experiences is the cookie cutter answer I can give you. What I alluded to in the beginning is that coming in this fall, parents will have login availability to that Otis platform, OTUS, that I mentioned. And we are also working really, really hard, as I said already, behind closed doors, and I hope in a way that will continue to evolve in the next couple of years on this idea of differentiated learning. How do we use this data to drive decision-making in the classroom, and what is material that is appropriate for each of the cohorts of students in the district? easier said than done.
Alyssa, can you move the mic a little bit
Of
closer?
course,
Sorry.
sorry, thanks, Peter.
Thanks.
With pleasure. Two more, we're almost there. Another one of the districts, the caucus's planks, forgive me, was high school readiness. I would argue that we do have alignment with our strategic plan for this goal in a nuanced way, but it's not specifically called out, and it's an area we might want to focus on. And if it continues to be of value that comes through the caucus's survey, as well as our own feedback. What we are doing for progress again toward this goal is we have an annual principal-led focus groups with high school freshmen that to analyze and their feedback on qualitative feedback on their readiness for New Trier and other high schools. We also do have, township middle school and high school principals meet on a monthly basis throughout the year to ensure that there's alignment and sort of gauge elementary preparedness along the way. And there's that 8th grade to freshman survey student feedback is something we're also going to continue to gather quantitatively through surveys and so forth, because ensuring that our students here in D36 arrive ready at high school is a key priority, even if it isn't explicitly called out in that strategic plan. Plank 5 is the data and sharing and access. Again, alluded to this briefly, but the strategic plan is pretty explicit in terms of our goals here. And there is, I think, also high alignment. While benchmarking data is not typically called out in the plan, it is identified as key action and steps by the administrative team, and student growth and enrichment data and all that's sent out to our families as testing is done throughout the year. And we know that when there is tier 1 instruction, the tier 1 instructional needs that came out of so much of the data insights is what has driven the literacy curriculum review and overhaul. And of course, we'll fuel that for the math curricular review and overhaul in the seasons to come. And intervention based on the data and insights throughout the calendar year, whether a child is in need of more enrichment or more support, is another way we really strive as a district to leverage data, not just at those moments when data becomes available, but throughout the year. I think last but not least is this relatively hot button topic of sexual health and culturally responsive learning standards. And the highlight, double click, I can say to you is important. It came out of our September 22nd board meeting with very careful analysis and word choice. And the district administration does not recommend adopting a policy that would include the addition of comprehensive health and sexual health education curriculums in K through 6 and 8. And there is no recommended change and will be no additional action required by the board. Right now, it is taught in grades, the reproductive and sexual health education is taught in grades 5 and 7. All curricula is publicly available online, and parents can always opt out of sexual health education by reaching out to their child's respective principals. So trying not to make major waves there. I'm happy to answer any questions. Tried to go quickly in the interest of time, but if anything comes up, if I can't address it, of course, we can take it back to the district and we will try to do so.
That's great. Thank you. A couple of points I want to hit as we get into questions here. One, you just heard all 4 board leaders speak to the platforms and that really are the result of the insights from the survey. The platforms are not their entire strategic vision. And in fact, many of the boards are going through the setting of new long-term strategic plans. And I think it's fantastic that you took the time to come and address these points. You could have spoken for hours more on the whole range of issues that you're dealing with on a daily, weekly basis. I think there'd be interest in doing that. We can't do it all in one night, but thank you for addressing the caucus points. The other thing is looking ahead to the summer survey and what we're going to go through this year, especially when you're going through a long-term strategic plan or there are a bunch of seats that are opening up. This is an important time for discussion. So please engage with that survey, encourage your neighbors to do that. You can see the effect it has. It directly translates into guidance and encouragement for things that we want the boards to focus on. It's not what we, the council, want. This is the data from Winnetka residents. And so to see our leaders taking that seriously and addressing it, I think should be applauded. And I really appreciate you all coming here and embracing that opportunity. The last thing I want to say before I turn it over to questions, there was already a question, and I want to clarify a point that I had on this slide, the slating slide that showed the positions that are opening up. The policy on terms, it's not a state limitation at all. So individuals can run for additional terms. Also said at the beginning, the caucus council is guided by our bylaws, and the bylaws and the tradition of the council has been that we will follow that term guidance in who we would slate as a candidate. So there could be an individual who wants to go ahead and run for another term. That's entirely possible, and they can do that. The caucus council will consider candidates that are within those term policies. All right, then we are going to move on to questions. So give me a second to get my view pulled up here. The first question is actually relevant for all of you, but it is this: neighboring towns frequently use referenda to gauge public sentiment on important issues. What is your theory or strategy for when it's appropriate to use a referenda for your governmental entity? And anybody can kick this off.
When it's required by state legislation.
Okay.
Period.
We get this question a lot at parks. Why don't you go to referendum? So I'll just say, referendum forces you to put a pin in a design, and we need the flexibility as we move through the various permitting nodes to make changes. So that would not be compatible with a defined design on a referendum, number one. Number two, you can also go to referendum if you need the money, and you're required by law at a certain level to go to referendum. We are not yet at that point. We have another 30 million of debt financing capacity that we will never use because it would not be responsible to try and service that level of debt at our agency. So usually people go to referendum for money or for approval, and our approval process is a flexible approval process, and we feel we have tried through farmers markets to gather that information and that feedback that's most pertinent.
Since I've been on the board, we haven't had anything come up where we've been even close to needing to go to referendum. So it hasn't come up. I think with as much as going on across the village, it's not really, we're not in a position where we would need to do that, and we kind of want to stay out of it. I don't think anybody wants the library to tax anybody anymore, so we are where we are.
We have a very low debt capacity in contrast to what was described for the Park District. I mean, very low, like low six figures. So we have an obligation to go to the district for a referendum. We just completed a massive project, and I joined the board after the failed referendum priorly. And so I think there's two parts to the answer. One is it's a requirement if you need to do major capital campaign that wasn't contemplated in your long-term maintenance agreement. And two, there's a spirit of transparency, I think, that has always characterized the D36 school district and with its residents about if there's a need. We all value education of our young people. There's a general sentiment if it's need and it's clear and it's communicated well, it will be supported. And I'm proud to say in the last 2 years of referendum work that went down, that was accomplished. We have, looking forward, 5 buildings that we are investing heavily into, one of which is extremely old and will continue to be an extremely expensive long-term maintenance decision. And so we will have to, from a fiscal stewardship standpoint over the next year, from a long-term maintenance discussion, and then years to come, a decision will maybe need to be made if one goes to referendum or makes other decisions that are material. But the strict answer to the question is anything over 100,000, we have to go to referendum for a long-term capital campaign. That's how D36 is run.
Okay, thank you. Next question is going to be for parks. So Christina, the question is this: neighboring towns use certified coastal erosion specialists to design their beaches. How was our partner selected, and why did we go with a civil engineering firm?
So we had a selection process that was run by our staff, and our process included presentations by several different engineering firms. The engineering firm that we chose, Red Barn, has subcontracted with a coastal engineering firm, Shabik and Associates, who has extensive experience here on the North Shore. And that can be accomplished. There's no technical coastal engineering designation in Illinois, so I think that's important to know. You can have experience and education in a variety of disciplines. And I think Shabik and Associates is the subcontractor for Matt Wright, Red Barn. And we went through that type of process. I just want to add that the village also has a coastal engineer, Caleb Barth from Baird Associates, who will be performing an independent review of all the coastal projects that go through. So that's an extra layer of sort of checks and balances.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we're seeing some comments, put that mic right up in your face because some people are still hearing. I think that was okay, but just a reminder, if you turn it, it
Thank
won't
you.
pick it up. And actually one more fast follow-up for you, Christina. There's a question, can Elder Beach be reopened in some interim manner while the work is continuing?
So not yet, really not yet, not this year. And there's two reasons. We have an unknown series of deliverables that the lake gives us, construction debris, pieces of the pier. And Lake Michigan is a very dynamic body. So until you actually go in and assess what your condition is, you can't really safely open it. For example, the gabion baskets, which are 20 years past their useful life. And those are the blankets that are horizontal and the baskets that are vertical, that are basically chain link fencing material that holds the stones up against the bluff to protect it. Those are failing. And when they fail with some force. The edges of those chain link fence segments are sharp and they're rusty, and they don't always fail with a warning. So it would be irresponsible at this point to have people using that beach until those were repaired. When you assess that a gabion basket might not be the best technology to use to stabilize those bluffs, then you begin to think about the right way to repair them. And that drives you to a conversation about, okay, if we're going to spend some dollars, we want to spend them in the most effective way possible. So let's look at the most effective way to repair them rather than just patching them and getting them back open.
Thank you. Getting a lot of questions about Elder Lane Beach. There might be more that we address in the follow-up, but that's also why we're doing that. And yeah.
Totally okay.
All right, Chris, next question is for you on the village. So the question is, there seems to be a debate between those who want to limit home sizes and to others who want the village to regulate less on size, structure, and composition. How do you think about this debate, and how does the latest lakefront zoning ordinance fit into it?
How do I think about the debate?
Just the range of perspectives, I guess, and then how does the lakefront dynamic factor in here as well?
Well, the lakefront dynamic does not factor into it at all with respect to size of houses.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, a lot can deliver a certain sized home depending on the area of that particular piece of property. So there is no difference between what the lakefront can deliver in FAR, which is the term we use for how much house you can build, and somebody who lives out in the tree streets over at Hibbard. So from that standpoint, there isn't any difference. With respect to the conversation itself, I will admit I have some PTSD on this subject because I watched it in its full flame and glory back in 2009, 2010, 2011. And it was not, I'll be real honest with everybody in this room, it was not a good look for this community. There was a lot of awful conversations, a lot of ugly things said, a lot of personal assassinations against people who held opinions on one side or the other. And, you know, property rights are a very, very big issue in this town. It's very quiet, but it's something that seems to be very near and dear to all Winnetka residents. And when you start to poke at them and legislate around them, then you're going to start to hear your opinions. I've heard them all before. There's nothing that I've heard today that's any different than what I heard 10, 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And To be honest with you, in the last year that I have left, I have no interest in leading this community into another contentious conversation. I acknowledge the problem, and I was one of the early proponents of modifying these things until I understood the community sensibilities on a much broader level and understand that this is the sort of issue that when you are ready to embrace it, you make sure you have plenty of runway and a lot of clean air to work with so you can have good conversations and make good decisions.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to schools next. So Alyssa, there's a question on, with so many teachers and administrators leaving the school district this year, what are the school district plans to support the institutional tenets of progressive education and creating lifelong learners?
Yeah, I will defer to the administration to speak to the specific stats. It's not a year of abnormally high churn. If the question's about retirements, we've built an engine, a really impressive engine. Actually, one of our assistant superintendents has built, Jeff Knapp, an engine of recruiting over the last 3 years that I've been on the school board. And well, 2 that he's been there while I've been there. And we are actively working and recruiting in a values-based way, all new teachers to the district. And there've been a lot of great new entrants as well. But for any specific questions on turnover and numbers, I'd be happy to follow up and defer to the administrators to share back specific stats.
Okay, thank you. Chris, I'm going to go back to you. I alluded to this earlier, but there's interest in hearing more, kind of a quick status on the One Winnetka property at Elm and Lincoln. And as that's playing out, what should residents be most excited about? And you could touch on the post.
2 years of construction.
Yeah. Well, there's a question. Actually, I'm gonna address a part 2 question of this too, because that's touched on as well. With the Chase Building and One Winnetka projects all occurring at the same time, how will we handle parking during and after construction? So maybe you can cover that all together.
Parking hasn't been completely sorted out yet, and I'd just be pulling something out of my pocket to answer that question. There is no answer at this point. We know
Bicycles?
Pardon me?
Bicycles, right?
The bicycles. Well, and the bank employees are moving into 2 different locations. Both have good access to public parking, so that shouldn't be an issue. With respect to the existing employees, obviously the construction workers will be a different story. One thing I've learned in my career is when you have a project that's near a train line, you'd be amazed at how many tradesmen are willing to use public transportation to get to and from work. And we're hoping that's going to be the case for when these 2 projects go. With respect for timing, One Winnetka was preliminarily approved by Village Council about a month ago. The developer now has to go back, finishes his plans, bring us his final designs. Village Council will weigh in on that. Hopefully give them final approval. And right now the timeline looks like possibly beginning demolition in the 4th quarter of this year, with construction following thereafter. And that would be for about 18 months.
Okay. Great. Next up, we're going to go back to schools. Alyssa, the question is, are neighborhood schools seem filled or filling quickly? Did the remap work, and are any of the 3 schools reaching capacity? What's the plan when they do?
I joined the board after the remap, so I can't speak to it definitively, but in terms of capacity issues, the beauty of the referendum being approved thereafter is we have built a tremendous amount of capacity into the plan as is appropriate at the schools. And the work we have done over the last even 2 decades and even the last few years on my watch with my fellow board members on forecasting has been eerily accurate. I mean, almost like the person who did this work had a crystal ball. So at this point, we're feeling pretty good. If there continues to be a massive migration from Chicago and other main metropolises into the suburbs over the next 10 years, there might be a different answer, but for now, we're okay.
Okay. Can you also speak to how the new curriculum overhaul has been impacting progressive education? One resident comments that they're concerned that adopting a new strategy package might crowd the time teachers need for spontaneous inquiry that come from their students.
Yeah, having been a product of this district, I obviously believe in the tenets of whole child education and child-led learning, which is why I serve voluntarily in this role. I think the difference is that a standard of curricula that has been both workshopped and piloted and put forth by our teachers and our Director of Teaching and Innovation and Learning, and then is a tier 1 instruction, meaning the core of what can be developed and delivered upon, by no means that there is a unanimous leveling and delivery of that information in a classroom to all the children, let alone between classrooms, let alone eliminating teacher choice. It simply levels the playing field so that all children get access to the basics that they need from a literacy standpoint, and candidly, the differentiation and the ongoing enrichment and personalization, customization that can continue to come is the work I know we'll continue to do now that foundation is set. But it by no means flies in the face of progressive ed. It, in fact, I think in some ways, once you have that strong foundation, it allows for even more individualized and whole child based learning, because you're not having to reinvent the wheel of that foundation.
Great, thank you. We've hit on a lot of the overall themes. I'm going to go back through some of the detailed questions and try to knock off some specifics that residents were looking for. Christina, this one's back to you. What is the difference between the plan the Park District Board had for Elder Centennial before entering into the now defunct land swap between 261 Sheridan and the plan that is now being submitted to the village? Very specific. If you need to take it as follow-up, go for it.
I'll speak to it generally, and then we can follow up with specifics. But just so everyone knows, we have 2 separate beaches. They're separated by 1 home, and the land swap was swapping that home for a parcel on the south end of Centennial. That swap is dormant. So now we're going ahead with 2 beach development repair plans so that we can get them open. The basic difference in the plan is that we will not be using that center parcel. What we'll be doing is developing Centennial Beach with an ADA accessible pathway, bringing our dog beach park up to standards for Cook County with some fencing, maintaining public access, with setting the dog beach slightly closer to the water. So there's public access pathway, and then creating a stone breakwater. This is for Centennial to help us hold the sand on both sides. Elder's plan is also developed, but we're waiting to determine what will happen. Maybe Chris can tell us tonight. Teasing. But what will happen with the village's stormwater discharge pipe. So that's the village's pipe and our pier over it. And it sits kind of in the middle of Elder Lane Beach. So when the village works through their Southeast Winnetka stormwater survey, which will determine some size of pipe that is appropriate for the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, then we will be able to finalize a design. Now, we had a design where it was embedded in the breakwater to the north, and then we had a plan where it stayed right where it was, and neither of those plans was 100% correct. So 100% sort of cooked based on what the village input was. So the village input will come, and then we will make that decision. So now we're pursuing 2 separate beach plans.
Got it. There's another question on beaches. Might not surprise you. Why is the Centennial / Elder Beach 3 to 4 times more expensive? And I don't know if that's accurate. That's the comment. Than the Kenilworth beach renovation. And maybe if you can speak to competitive bids and if maintenance costs and sand replenishment have been accounted for in the current cost estimates.
So the last information that I had about Kenilworth was that their cost was about $9.1 million. And our last costs are 70% construction costs for Centennial are $6.9 million. Our very refined estimate for Elder with that one variable are about 6 million. So we think that for a beach that's roughly, I want to say about 3 times the size of Kenilworth's, between 2.5 and 3 times the size of Kenilworth's. That 9.1 million number for Kenilworth and a roughly 13 million number for Winnetka. It seems like we are pricing accurately. You don't put construction projects out to bid until you're at 100% of the construction documents. So obviously that's the next step for Centennial. And we'll refine those, that 6.9 million number even further. I think we got it down to sorry, I had it written down right in here. Okay, 6.9. I guess I didn't put in the complete articulated number, but 6.9 million is the number that we have for Centennial at 70% construction documents.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, we're going to go to library for this one. There's a question, I think, looking for a little bit more detail on Library Park now that it's open space and under library jurisdiction. What thought has been given to future use of that land? Will it remain open? I know this has been addressed before, but maybe you can speak to the latest and greatest.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more detail to share beyond what I said before. We are not planning on developing it in terms of building on it. We're planning on maintaining Library Park as a green space, as far as I know, for as long as I know. And we are talking about and thinking about how we can use it for programming, whether that is having story time outside, building raised beds, bringing in a beehive, whatever sorts of things we can do outside with our patrons. So that's the plan for it for now.
Okay, thank you. And one more for schools. Alyssa, the question is, the school district has wonderful open space. Do you have any plan to protect, or does the board have any plan to protect that space in the future? There's reference to Nick Corwin Park being a school property that went to the park district. So that's part of where that's coming from.
At this point, with the most recent referendum, we were completely focused on maintaining the outdoor green space we have, and no plans that I've seen of late have any changes to that.
Okay.
I found my number, if you don't mind.
Sure, yeah, please.
I put on my glasses. It's 6,964,880 for Centennial.
Okay, thank you. One question is something that was part of what we wanted to cover tonight, but with limited time. Could you each speak a little bit to looking ahead to the summer survey or your own strategic planning initiatives? Where could you use more information, more input from the community? Which insights would be helpful and actionable?
Most of what the village is working on this year is of a highly technical nature, as I referenced the power plant, and that's going to be a big decision along with whether we ratify the new IMEA contract. So with respect to that being put on the survey, I don't know how much use it would be unless we have certified engineers who deal in this sort of thing. All the other stuff we're working on is in process. And as I reported this evening, a lot of these things that we're working on are from these planks and previous planks and are in the pipeline.
But I like how you addressed earlier. Clearly, you would process some of the data from last year's survey on which store types would residents like to see more of. Do we want a hardware store? Do we want a bakery? Are there other, as you're continuing to think about business development, other insights along those lines that would be helpful? Sometimes we even ask the same questions again on the survey to see if public opinion has changed.
I know.
For a long time, a public pool was on there, and there was discussion, well, should we take that off? There are real discussions about that. So yeah, anything else along those lines, or just kind of continuing to get?
Well, I mean, the wish list is always nice to have. I mean, it keeps Liz fresh as far as what new thinking might be in town. So that would be fine. But again, with the 5% vacancy factor, we're really looking for that special tenant now, making sure that any pieces that the village can possibly help put in play are going to be ones that are consistent with what the community is looking for.
Okay. Christina?
Every summer, we survey at the end of our season. So it's a tough time for families because it's the third week in July through the month of August. So just as you're going on vacation and heading back to school, that's when we'll be surveying because that's the end of our programming season. And we're looking for feedback always in that survey about what worked in our programming, what worked in the scheduling, what worked in the age groups, et cetera. What did the mix of programming serve your family's needs? And we go out to ask for that information in 3 different ways. We put QR codes at all of the facilities. We contact everyone who is listed in Rec Track, which is actually how you pay for your programs. And then we send a random sampling of postcards. So that's the chronic annual survey. The comprehensive plan that we just went out to RFP for, and we're expecting to complete through July of 2025, that will contain a needs assessment. And that's a bigger, broader, comprehensive survey. Things we do have, things we don't have, things people would like us to use our space for. So please look for that also. Those are the 2 planning tools that we have in the caucus survey. We're more than happy to hear feedback about programming. We're more than happy to hear feedback about, I think we've made some great progress in live streaming our meetings. We've made some great progress in updating our website and beefing up our website and putting all of our meetings on YouTube and diligent community. So those kinds of things, sharing the information, getting the information out there are very helpful to us.
Okay. So kind of what's working and how do people want to be engaged? Okay. Melissa?
I'd say it's similar for us. We are always looking to, like I mentioned, get feedback and to understand how people are using the library, what they want to see in the library. What are we doing that's working? What are we doing that's not working? And then looking at the information to use for how we want to move forward strategically. So just making sure that we're in touch with what the needs of the community are and what the best uses of our space and resources are. So that's really what we look for in the survey.
Melissa?
I want to huddle with Dr. Tess and our president, Dan Waters, who's out of the country today, but there are a couple of things just to give a sneak preview, conversations about mobile phone policy and in the schools and role of technology. I think those were a couple items that have been coming up in the last 6 months that we probably could use your help querying. And then as we look to the next strategic plan, ensuring if there's anything we could get ahead of, want to huddle with the colleagues, but I'm sure it could be helpful in getting that going, even though we're a year away.
Got it. That's great. Another area the caucus council is going to be working with the boards in the coming weeks is going to be around profiling. What is the commitment to be on a board, and what does that look like from just the logistics to the focus areas? And for somebody who might be interested but might not really understand that well, could you each speak a bit to how you think about that? And we'll actually publish. We're going to try to publish sort of a 1-pager for each of the board that lays that out better for folks.
So for the school board, going in reverse order, it's a monthly meeting with multiple subcommittees, finance, policy, a True North collective we've been a part of, and others. And then there are, of course, ad hoc one-on-one calls or always publicly disclosed as appropriate, but meetings that come up in times of crisis like COVID, et cetera. We were meeting almost weekly. It's a major commitment. It is 100% volunteer service, the capital S, no dollars change hands whatsoever. And so it's big. It's a commitment and it's real and it's ongoing. And so I've peeled off 3 other nonprofit boards because of it. If you want to do it right, you have to put the time in.
For the library, we are also a monthly meeting. It's a few hours a month, and then the time that you need to put in to prepare for it, reading materials and, thinking about the topics and discussion that we'll be having. And then anything else that comes up outside of that, whether it is supporting the library at different functions, thinking about community involvement. And then we have topics come up throughout the year where it may require some additional conversations or some thinking outside of board meetings. So I'd say a few hours a month. I'd say we're probably the lightest of these guys, but still just as important.
if not more so. I would say the commitment depends on the year, depends on the topic. We have 2 meetings a month throughout the year, and then in summer, which is our busy season, we go to 1 meeting a month. Meetings can range from 2 hours to 5 hours. There are committee assignments, there are liaison assignments, there are negotiating team assignments, depending upon what the tasks are at hand. It helps if there's an expertise in real estate or finance or law or administration / policy. Those are very helpful areas for us to build a strong board. There are the Park District does all of the programming on every holiday. So you're expected to attend, you're expected to help, you're expected to stay until the last garbage can is emptied. And many of us do that willingly because the staff is pretty amazing. But those are some long days for them as well. So.
Well, the village has 3 meetings a month, plus each trustee has at least one other off-council assignment, whether it's a liaison to an advisory body like the Plan Commission or the Environmental and Forestry Commission, or whether it's working on out-of-village communities like the Red Center, which is our emergency dispatch for fire and police, that sort of thing. So between the 3 meetings plus this other meeting, you know, you're literally engaged every day of the week during the course of the month. Time commitments, you know, it all depends on how disciplined you are in doing it. When I first started, I know as a trustee, it would take me, I think the commitment would be about 2 to 4 hours going through a packet. Typically, our packets are 300 pages.
Some light bedtime reading.
Yeah. Luckily, there's some repetitive material in there, so you find yourself ripping it out as you're going through, but you have to touch every page to make sure. So, you know, every Thursday or Friday, a 300-page packet will show up on your door, and you're expected to know what you're talking about by Tuesday. So there is a fair amount of work in a compressed time to be ready for the council meetings. And you know, then we have farmers markets. I know Kim Handler runs the farmers market, and she's out there, you know, 4 to 6 hours every Saturday morning the entire summer. So the commitment can vary based on what assignments you're interested in and what assignments are available. But it is a big commitment, and it should not be undertaken lightly by anybody who's seeking to serve, because there's nothing more frustrating than showing up to a meeting and not being able to spend the time necessary to be ready to have the conversation. And I think all of us at this table understand the commitment we need to make in order to be good civil servants and to help the community out in our own way. So it's a big time commitment. And I'll tell you, the village president could easily be a full-time paid position. And I'm not saying that because when anybody feels sorry for me. It's just, if you want to get things done, you got to do the work. And you can't do all the work on Tuesday night between 7 and 10. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen during the week. And so if you throw your hat in the ring, be ready to work.
Call it civil service for a reason, right?
Amen.
It's service.
I did forget about the farmers markets.
Yeah.
Those are sort of 50% fun.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap with one final resident question, and this is a fun one. Can you share one? No, truly, it's a fun one. Can you share an innovative thing that is going on within your board right now that you're excited about, that we all can leave here excited about?
I think the tenet of progressive ed has been project-based learning. And as we've both done a thoughtful job of the Winnetka Public Schools Foundation and the partnership with the district, as well as in all these wonderful educators, the project-based learning that is driven by students, supported by teachers, and of course the district, is pretty extraordinary. And it shows the breadth, depth, talent, resources, creativity, and promise, I think, of what progressive ed can be.
I think for the library, there's innovations being done in the walls of our buildings every day by our staff and by our director. And it is, I'd say, a highlight of our board's meeting to hear about those things. They're very involved in the Library Association. So whether that's the Illinois Library Association or whether it's a national organization, and sharing the innovative programming that they're putting together within our walls so that other libraries can learn from it. And then coming back from those organizations with learnings from other libraries that we can then implement at our library. And so I'd say the credit for the innovation really goes to our staff, because they really are doing a great job making sure that we're pressing forward and we're not just a stuffy, quiet place where you can go and sit in silence. You can do that too. We have a quiet room.
I'm excited because we're heading into our biggest, busiest period of the year. So I'm excited for the Memorial Day Parade. I'm excited for 4th of July. I'm excited for camps, which is, if you think about it from a business perspective, all of the summer programs are basically starting a business, from scratch, staffing it up, running it, and then letting all those kids go back to college. And then the next summer, doing the same thing all over again. So I'm very grateful to the staff. I'm particularly grateful to Kate Erickson and Shannon Nazal, who worked on this presentation. And I'm grateful to all the staff that put together an amazing 4th of July for all of us to celebrate together in Winnetka. So that's one thing I'm excited about, looking forward to.
I thought of something.
Please.
Recently, Village Council, through our budgeting process, authorized the water department to move forward with what is known as remote meter reading. So you all know the 2 meter reading guys because they're in the neighborhood all the time, right? And Jessica, I think you might remember that we actually passed on this probably 15 years ago or so. When it came up, it was a very expensive proposition to do remote metering back in the 2010s, I guess. But it kept coming back and it kept coming back. The technology got better, as things always do, and it got much more affordable. It's still an expensive initiative, but the cool thing about this remote metering is if you let the village know you're going on vacation or you're going to be in Florida for 4 or 6 months or 6 months in a day, and your house is going to be empty. It's not me. Maybe in a year, okay? But let's say you left, if your toilet's broken and it's running or something, a hose broke in the basement to your washing machine and that's leaking all over the place, the village will be able to look at your usage and actually flag it if something happens, so they can call you up and when you're sitting in sunny Florida in the middle of February and say, you got to get back up here because something's leaking in your house. The other thing it allows us to do is be much more efficient in our billing, much more accurate and time sensitive. And it also allows us to deal a lot more effectively and quickly with, when you sell houses, there's always the transition from one owner to another on the water bills and the like. And this all happens literally by just flipping a switch from a remote location. We are finding work for the 2 meter readers. These guys have been with us forever. They're great guys. We're not going to just throw them out because we got a machine that can do something better than they can. We're finding work for them, and we're going to make sure they stick around as long as they want to stay here in Winnetka.
Great, thank you. All right, we're going to wrap it up. I want to share a couple of final comments. Actually, before we go to the next slide, there have been a couple of questions about, okay, what do we do if we're not clear on something that was shared tonight, or if we feel like it wasn't totally correct? I said something myself that wasn't very clear and corrected. So what we'd like to do and where we'll go from here is questions. There were still a couple of specific points that we did not get to tonight. As we said we would at the beginning of this and leading up to it, we will take those questions that we could not cover. We will put them in a list. We are going to pass those to the boards and then give us a little bit of time to provide answers to those. We will get those published and posted back to the public. So if there is something that you feel like wasn't clear or needs to be addressed, I would say email the boards because they will be working on the answers to those questions. So that's the best way to go forward with that. The texting number that we had for tonight, that's really just for tonight. Unfortunately, we're not going to be texting buddies with everybody in the village. We're just not staffed for it. So that number, you can email us anytime. And so we're absolutely accessible, but we're not going to be manning that text number 24/7 moving forward. So stick with email. Last thing is, if you go to next slide. Again, if this was helpful, if you appreciate the work that the council's doing, please do consider a donation. There were comments leading up to this event on, hey, it'd be great if the council did more physical mailing, send out a note to everybody in the village about the spring town hall. I agree. I think that'd be great. That costs money. So we have to fundraise the money that we can't overspend. So just as the boards have to manage their budget, we do too. So please consider donating. There is a lot more we can do if we have more funds. Thank you all again for coming, staying late, addressing the questions. This is the dynamic of how it should work, and really appreciate the transparency and thoughts this evening. So thank you residents for participating and engaging as well, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Peter.
Mine are all asleep, hopefully.
Why not?
Good luck.
I've been in this room when it was